I was really fortunate to go to Vancouver for about a week to be part of the Olympic resistance networks organizing around opposing the Olympics, and their slogan, which I did not realize how brilliant it was until I went there, which they've been organizing with for 3 or 4 years, was "No Olympics on Stolen Native Land." And everyone there, whether they were, it basically framed that entire thing, whether people were NGOs, liberals, Marxists, anarchists, indigenous, queers, homeless, everyone's like, the Olympics is a giant capitalist development scheme, and it's stealing from us. And that was how the language was all week that I was there. And that's fundamentally radical, but it was such an intriguing way of shaping it without saying, hi, we're the anti-capitalists. It's like, our world is being stolen from us. That's one of the hearts of capitalism, is taking the world from us. So I thought that was a brilliant way of a movement framing something that actually opened up space for all sorts of people to synthesize something really powerful that's going on in Vancouver I've never seen before. Okay, that's one thing. The second, and how many minutes do I have left as I'm rambling too fast?
You have 7 minutes.
7, okay. The other, I think, which would be really interesting synthesis right now is to take some of the best of the critique out of anti-capitalism or Marxism, communism, which is looking at how exploitation is working right now, looking at how really using the critique, the analysis has been done to really get at where capitalism is right now, bringing the critiques, but then taking seriously the critiques within anarchism of hierarchy. And I think the two don't function together. You need to understand exploitation and hierarchy, and I think Marxists have been much better at understanding exploitation, and anarchists have been better at understanding hierarchy. And when you put the two together, you have a much more complex understanding of how power happens right now, and might allow us to actually synthesize something that would actually potentially move toward revolution. So I think alone they don't make sense, and they actually make more sense together. And it's not that anarchists haven't actually had critiques of capitalism, or Marxists haven't had critiques of certain types of Marxists, of forms of governance, but I think by and large Marxists tend to stay in more the economic realm, and anarchists tend to stay in more the cultural, political, social realm, and those two need to come more and more together. So that was, I think, another fruitful synthesis. The other is to actually take some of the things that anarchists and Marxists have pretended they don't see in each other. So Marxists always say, well, we're the smart ones, and anarchists don't have any analysis or theory. We have all the critique and the analysis. But I actually been really, myself have been shaken up lately by realizing it isn't just that anarchist history has been hidden, but the politics of what got translated over the past 80 or 90 years has actually denied us access to what anarchists wrote all around the world in other languages. For those of us that are reading mostly English language works, for those of us that can read many different languages, we might have a broader sense of that. But the fact that Marxism was able to come out as the dominant theory wasn't just that it's the only thing that was out there. I've been lately reading some things that have been translated from other languages into English by anarchists that I've actually been astonished what anarchists were writing at certain times that I didn't realize because I was unable to read those languages. So maybe Marxism giving anarchism more credit for analysis, and anarchism, instead of saying we're the ones that have the principles, the ethical viewpoint on the world, we're the ones that have the better practice, to go back into Marxism and understand that, wow, anarchists use the situationists all the time, in a sense, for both forms of practice, for instance, and they were Marxists. And to actually be genuine, to actually give credit on both sides. So part of it is going back and looking for principles in Marxism that anarchists have ignored, or anarchists use and don't understand they're from Marxism, and Marxists and anarchists both looking at each other's forms of practice and understanding how those might actually synthesize into a better way. So as I started, I think it's a problem that anarchists are now using sort of Leninistic tactics or clandestine, vanguardist tactics, but there might be some practices, and there have been practices within forms of Marxism and communism that anarchism could bring into a synthesis, and vice versa for Marxism, until we could basically get rid of both words in a sense. I retain anarcho-communism right now for myself, because I think right now they still bring the sort of best of both in the North American context. They might make no sense increasingly ever any place, and maybe we all need to rethink that, including myself, about whether those labels make any sense. Okay, and lastly, I was going to end, I think I'm at my end. All right, and the last thing I want to end on is any synthesis, I think, has both Marxism and anarchism to become a synthesis. Actually, and I'm going to talk specifically about North America. I don't know whether it's because we're all so completely damaged by capitalism. Someone said to me last night, they thought the United States is so far gone. We are so far gone as human beings, culturally and psychically, that there's no hope left anymore of us ever being able to get past that. And honestly, when I crossed the 30 minutes from the US border to Vancouver, I kind of got that. I mean, it was like, I felt like the social relationships, the way people were able to behave toward each other, the humanity people still retain 30 miles above a border of a country that I supposedly live in. It was astonishing to me. But have we been so damaged that there's no possibility of us actually being able here to actually synthesize something better? But I think the way for us to do that is to actually do much more rigorous analysis of our own conditions in the United States, for those of us working there, and for us to actually do our own theoretical work and to not romanticize, oh, look at the Greeks just did this cool thing, let's bring that over. Or the Canadians just did this cool thing, let's bring that over. But what are all the traditions, not just across this thing called the United States, but as Roxanne was talking about, let's look to the traditions and the ways the stories we lived and be shaped by in the spaces that we live, and use those traditions to build the synthesis from, to be as smart as all the movements we have romanticized all around the world. So our synthesis has to both evaluate what the hell's going on with us at this historical moment, using our own sort of traditions that come out of spaces we inhabit, and then use that to synthesize something that actually speaks to where we are at this moment, right in time. So I'll just end again on that note, Olympics on stolen native land. The brilliance of that was, and this is my own complete ignorance as someone who grows up in the United States, going to Canada, every 18-year-old I met there told me the entire history of Canada, and I got why that resonated so much there in a way that it might not resonate in other parts of the United States, but maybe it should. And maybe we need to synthesize not just anarchism and Marxism, but indigenous traditions, feminist traditions, queer traditions, all sorts of other things in the United States that are about the places we live, and move out from those in the places to synthesize from, because we're here in the United States. So that's not everyone is from the United States, but I actually want us to actually try to do that as good a work here as synthesizing that as other movements have. And I probably actually talked my 20 minutes. Okay, that's the end.